Hey there, cats! Have you wanted a game about ancient or medieval civilization, which is not a strategy, not about Vikings or Asians, and not a motherfucking be-damned Assassin's Creed? Ooh, you got the taste, man. Those games are rare. But, well, I have one in mind, and it's not even Pharaonic, which I completed 2 or 3 times and definitely recommend it to everyone out there. No, the game I'm talking about today is surprisingly fresh, and the name of the game is Asterigos, Curse of the Stars. Yeah, I so wanted to play a modern game about ancient Greece, I didn't even wait for my usual 5 years after the game came out. And from purely ancient Greek point of view, Asterigos is great. The aesthetics are top. The only grudge I have in that area lie in the fact that our main character is Viking. Again, for whatever fucking reason. But alright, I'm letting it slide. And yet, as you might have noticed, I do not play Asterigos. I play Werewolf the Last Warrior. Why? Well, aside from the fact that I think that games like Asterigos would be absolutely boring to watch, the reason why I've chosen Werewolf lies in the fact that whoever wrote Asterigos fucked up the plot. Completely and irreversibly. And so it goes that for the next half hour or so, I will talk about nothing but the way Asterigos messed up the plot, thus probably making it my first gameplay video with a single, coherent talking point. So brace yourselves. And so, in Asterigos, I completed about 1/3 of a game, according to my approximation, and I've just finished a prison turned mad doctor's laboratory that is named Styx. And I'm mad. Man, you see, the point is, Styx is a laboratory full of man-made horrors beyond your imagination, and I already googled it just to be sure. Nobody gets his ass introduced to the pointy end of the spear for all the horrors and suffering that has been performed in Styx. Nobody pays for it. Everybody just gets away with it for whatever fucking reason. And this is just fucking beyond me. This is such a letdown for... I don't know, I never played Dark Souls. Maybe it's a Dark Souls thing and you got introduced this atmosphere of despair. I don't know, I didn't have the same feeling in the Pharaonic, albeit it also was kinda influenced by Dark Souls. But this is just bollocks if you ask me, really. I mean, we all know why we play video games, right? And I did not get my boss. Like, it's simple like this. I did not get my boss fight. This is not just the bad writing, this is the bad way to set up a video game. I mean, yeah, I get a boss fight, but I get to fight some failed experiments, some poor guy, and main character even marks it in her journals that it's just a poor guy and she feels sorry for him. And before that inmate failed experiment, there are about half a dozen bosses who are also just people who are doing their jobs or whatever, who do not feel like major evil, you know? And you're actually somewhat conflicted about killing them, and it is reflected in the plot of the game itself. So when you get to Styx, you are getting this feeling like, finally, I'm going to do something right. I'm going to kick some ass, rightfully. I'm gonna get good. And it just doesn't happen. I don't know why, but Asterigos, he just allowed the villains to get away with everything, for whatever reason. The main evil guy, he just left. He just left a note that I'm gone. See ya. Actually, I got so mad at that point that that was the moment where I got online and went to my search engine just to check the plot of the Asterigos and to verify that it is indeed the end of this plotline. And yeah, the villain is gone, we aren't getting to him. This is really weird in my opinion. Maybe I'm too old school, maybe, yeah, but really, imagine if in Aliens 2, instead of fighting Alien Queen, Ripley got to fight some Marine who was driven mad after he realized he got hours to live and he got infected with a facehugger's egg. Something along those lines. It's just fucking bad. However, which way you put it, it's just wrong, man. This is not how you write the plot, and that's about it. I usually say that this is just my opinion, etc, etc. No, no, this time it's not my opinion, man. This time you've done it fucking wrong. This is not how you do it. And I mean, the plot like this can work, but it's about the presentation, you know? There are games out there like Demonophobia. I don't know if you know about this game, but it's a gore porn. It's a game about a schoolgirl who gets in hell and she doesn't become some warrior, no, she just gets brutalized and murderized by demons and gets resurrected just to be murdered again over and over. There are horrors out there and other games which are made to feel yourself powerless in the face of the situation, but Asterigos is not Demonophobia or anything along those lines. Asterigos is presented more like Doom or Unreal. It is a game where you're a hero who gets to kick some ass, and if not to set some wrongs right, then at least to get a bloody vengeance and kill some baddies. And that's why I compared Asterigos to Alien 2 when it comes to the movies, or any other action movie really. Asterigos feels like Rambo if Sylvester Stallone was a little Viking girl in ancient Greece. This is how Asterigos feels like. But the plot, it doesn't support this feel at all. If this was an attempt to mix an action game with a plot that is unexpected from an action game, I'd say it failed. There are good attempts out there. For example, there is Spec Ops: The Line, which is awesome in my opinion. I like the game a lot. And then there is Serious Sam, where despite the fact that you never fight mental, it is already kind of a running joke that at the end of the game you fight whoever but not mental. You still, by the way, in Serious Sam series, fight obviously bad guys who you definitely want to kill, and not to pity or somehow help them. So that's for one. But if the anticlimax of Styx wasn't enough on its own, there is more to it. You see, there is a character in your base of operations which you visit rather often, a smith named Vulcane, an awesome character, very positive, and she just can't get no break. I mean, and it really makes me sad, man. She really fucking can't get a break from the plot. I mean, there's no point at which someone cuts her any slack, and she just keeps on being happy about her life, and in the end, pretty much the sole thing that is left in the life of this smith, her whole happiness, her whole character, it is carried by a pillar of love for her husband. And of course, her husband died. In fact, he probably suffered a fate worse than death, because he was in Styx, which nobody got punished for. And thing is, eventually, even though Vulcane, the smith, she tells her, please tell me what happened to my husband, I really need to know. In the end, Hilda, the main character, decides not to tell her. And you see, after all the bad things that happened to Vulcane, plus the fact that Vulcane was pretty much the only person in the shelter who was outright supportive of Hilda to the outsider, and Vulcane extended all her love and support to Hilda, really. So it feels like Hilda kinda decided to betray Vulcane's trust, at least that's how I see it. By deciding to ignore her plea to tell her what happened to her husband, she pretty much betrays Vulcane behind her back. This fucking hurts. This fucking hurts me. Yes, at this point, telling her about the fate of her husband would probably break Vulcane down, and it would be, you know, complete closure for the character. End of the line. Madness, despair, mercy, kill, choose yours. You know, choose your option. It would have been bad. But at the same time, it feels like it would have been right. Especially because at this point, Hilda is already established as the character who prefers to tell the truth. There's one choice where you can ignore this option and not to tell the truth, but in another side quest you have no option and you're always the truth bringer. So this would be the third time Hilda would be driven to say that the beloved one, have died. And really, leaving Vulcane to toil away with false hope doesn't feel anyhow better than keeping your silence. The only somewhat positive side of this story is that once you've got this dialogue when Hilda decides not to tell Vulcane, and as soon as you reload the shelter map, you find out that the other character came forward and told Vulcane that her husband is dead. And after initial sadness, Vulcane continues on being happy, and you know what, it only makes it worse, because I don't know if you did, but I read a novel named The Suicide Shop by Jean Toul. Hope I didn't mispronounce his name. And if you read it, you know what it ends with. The main character, Alan, with whom I see so many parallels between him and Vulcane, and seeing Vulcane all happy after everything, after her only hope has been destroyed, I just cannot see any good ending for her post-credits. Once again, this rough treatment of the only good character in the whole fucking shelter might have worked if we at least could have gotten our vengeance on the big bad who was the perpetrator behind this whole drama. But we do not get that for whatever reason, mate. We do not get that. So what can I say? I mean, really, Vulcane should have got at least something good coming her way, given that she's the most positive character in the shelter. The other characters are, by the way, less or more assholes. Well, there's a bodyguard which just follows orders, typical soldier, but the others, they are with this shade of aristocracy upon them, or the shady black market dealer. And the way they treat you, you know, it's all feel dubious. You even feel dubious helping them. It kind of feels like they're using you, even though it comes to a point where you finally come to terms and agree to help each other. It still feels like kind of a business, and they treat you, you know, like a commoner, so to say, with all their aristocratic manner all over them. Aside from that soldier guy, but his loyalties, and he makes that clear, lie with that sad aristocracy, and he will serve them. And that shady black market dealer guy, he will not afraid to use you, it is also clear. All in all, Vulcane is the only unquestionably good person in the whole fucking shelter, and you want to help her, and you can't. All the others, I cannot say you have pleasure dealing with them, but you gotta do it because these are realities of war. You're in their country, so when in Rome, act like Romans. Alright. Vulcane is the only character who you feel close with. The only character that you feel like putting out for. And you know, if I actually stop for a moment and try to think about the reasons why the plot and the presentation of Asterigos doesn't connect, it would be really hard to say. I mean, I cannot say this is because I was unprepared, that nobody prepared me for the drama. Nobody prepared me for Spec Ops The Line as well, but Spec Ops The Line went down good. And this here, it just doesn't work. I guess overall the reason lies somewhere in the fact that the writers didn't quite manage to set one tone and carry it through the whole game. I'm not sure why, maybe it's because of the main character. I mean, she's a little girl, and she's written like a little girl. Now, this point is actually rather good, you know? The character feels like a girl indeed. She doesn't feel like some kind of a strong warrior. She feels like she overcoming the odds, and like she, for the first time, faces the reality. And yet, even though it feels like Hilda faces the reality, it doesn't feel really serious or something. Like, Hilda, for example, she never really breaks down and cries or something like that. She feels sad and stuff, but it's not like it shakes her to the bones. I don't feel that. It really feels somewhat superficial, so to say, you know, it doesn't feel serious. Like, there's a moment where a prisoner gets turned to dust. This is how people die in Asterigos, because of the curse in Athos. People of Athos turn to dust. So when one of the prisoners turned to dust, she's like, what's happening? Why is this happening? But it is so superficial, it's not driven to the point. Once again, remember Spec Ops The Line. People do not turn in dust there. gore, horrors, and the main character, who is a grown man by the way, is driven to insanity, hallucinations. Spec Ops The Line is serious business, unlike Asterigos, where people turn to dust. And therefore, all the bad things that happen to Volcane, they do not feel like they should be here. It feels off. A lot of things feel off in Asterigos, but that one with Volcane is right out. And then we do not get to exercise our vengeance on the culprit. You see, it all doesn't connect. This is what I'm trying to convey to you, it just doesn't connect. And I trust I'm not the only one who sees that. So Asterigos, it's bad, man. It's Batman. Volcane's plotline is not the only thing that feels off, really. It's just the one that felt most off. It is the one after which I actually wanted to drop the game. I eventually decided against it, but I decided to take a fucking break and play something else. But overall, there are many things that seem a bit too serious for a game that is set like Asterigos. For example, I already kinda mentioned it, somewhat passively. There are suicides in this game. There are lots of them. There are even side quests where you can drive even more people to suicide. Hooray! And that already felt kinda, offbeat. But alright, I thought, okay, this can work. Once again, at that point, I still hope that we will, after all, exact our vengeance onto the culprit of the whole thing. After the stakes, all those suicides, they obviously also got themselves shining in a new kind of light. Oh, here's for example another side quest which I got really angry at. There's a moment where a girl asks you to meet her lover because she cannot walk because of the injury. And her lover turns out to be a cultist. And by this moment of the game, you've already dealt with the cultists, and there's no way to do it other way. This is not one of the quests where you can choose which quest you do first. You are dealing with the cultists before you get this side quest. So you know that cultists can be good. There's an awesome harpy girl named Echo, and there are other friendly guys here and there. So you get background on all the cultist thing as well, and you know that there are people who can be dealt with. There are good people among cultists. There are just people who survive and try to make their families to survive in the fucking hellhole that is Athis under the Asterigos curse. And as you meet her lover and bring her the item which she asked to deliver in her name, that item poisons him, and you're forced to kill him. And that was the moment when I got really fucking angry. What a motherfucking bitch. I really wanted to, well, you know what I wanted to do. Her ass, pointy end of my spear. On a collision course. And of course, the game didn't let me do it. I mean, damn, this is probably the worst. The worst thing that can come out of a video game is when a video game doesn't allow you to do probably the most obvious thing that can be done in the situation. And I would have accepted if it would have been, for the sake of the character, but I really do not feel that it would have been so much out of character as well. So I just do not get it. I so much wanted to kill that bitch who gave me that side quest. So much wanted to send her to her lover and make her explain everything to him in person. I was angry at that. That was fun. And the only thing that is left of the guy as he turns to dust is a pedant, I'm not sure the correct word, pedant or pendant, which obviously is a symbol of their love, because the inscription on that pendant, it says, "To my beloved." And the fact that the girl he went through so much stuff to fucking even meet, and he obviously only had the best intentions in his mind for her, and she just poisoned him despite all his efforts. Oh boy, that was fucked up, Once again, we do not get even an option to exact our vengeance on a person that used us blatantly, even though she might not be a villain and there might be a lot of stuff behind the scenes in this particular side quest. Still, we as the player have just been used and we do not get an option to get some sweet revenge. So yeah. Once again, after Styx, it doesn't seem like a big deal. After all, the main villain of the game just left us a note that he's out on vacation. Come back another time. I guess that side quest was a taste of things to come. Boy. All in all, what can I say about Asterigos? Can I recommend this game? There are positive sides in it. Once again, the aesthetics of ancient Greece, they really work. The main character is good and she gets her moments. The gameplay, I don't know, I never really played Dark Souls, but I guess it's good. And if you're not privy just like me, just go my way and hack your health. There are other points that are hit or miss, for example, the journal. It's very good, there are a lot of art in the journal and the art is gorgeous. But at the same time, it doesn't really work as a journal. It doesn't guide you through your quest. As a matter of fact, it's kinda like a real journal. The main character mostly just notes the things in her journal after they have had happened. But the quests itself, they're very vague. And if not for the multiple guides that I found in the internet, it would have been pretty hard to do all the side quests. Because they're not noted anywhere, there's not even a list of side quests in the game. The side quest to collect fallen soldiers' dog tags doesn't receive even as much as a note in the journal of the main character. So if you forget about it, you just forget about it, and that's about it. I don't know what to say. And in the end of the day, as I said, I had that idea to drop the game somewhere towards the middle of it. I'm not even in the middle and I already had an idea to drop it, so I'm not sure if it is a game that can be recommended. Once again, I decided that I will stay with this game, but it is because I already kinda halfway through making a video with it, you know? It will be yet another of my tutorials eventually, but if I didn't put so much effort in the video, I'd probably just drop the game. The fact that I even started the game already says that it is not the worst game out there. But, you know, I think in the end of the day, Asterigos just doesn't cut it. Because all in all, I think I have a rather negative feeling about this game. I gotta say, I didn't have this feeling with Vampur, if anything, the other relatively recent game I walked through. Despite the fact that Vampur was kind of a drag and mediocre overall, I didn't want to drop it. Vampur also was kinda gloomy and all the drama went on, and it also dealt with a city which got crippled by a major sickness. As a matter of fact, if you think about it for a moment, there are a lot of parallels between Vampur and Asterigos. But Vampur played its drama right. I guess I can even say that I enjoyed Vampur. And despite the fact that the choices that are available to the player are handled in a way that is a complete and utter mess in Vampur, as the game pretty much forces you to be a passive onlooker and abstain from almost any kind of a meaningful choice if you want to get the best ending legitimately, which to my opinion was a very weird decision. At least in Vampur there was an ability to make a choice in the first place, and in Asterigos there are no choices. There are two endings, yes, but most of the conditions for the endings are determined by an option you've chosen in a dialogue, or a side quest which you either complete or don't, which is not really a choice. And there is perhaps just one real choice in Asterigos, to whether or not to kill the enslaved smith at one point of the game. Though to make it even more meaningless, after you get the dialogue that indicates that you've met the condition, you can go back and finish off all the slaves and no one will notice. Though the way said enslaved smiths are presented in the game, the fact that they are dead would have jeopardized the whole future of the Aethys, because said enslaved guys pretty much provide the only food source to the whole cursed city, and yet the game just doesn't give a damn that they are dead. Vampur also wasn't the role model when it came to choices and decisions, but if you kill a character in Vampur, it actually affected the world. It could have been done better, but ultimately making a choice in Vampur was actually interesting and impactful. and in Asterigos you pretty much can't make a choice at all, and in the rare moments you can, the game barely gives a damn. Aside from Vampur, another example that comes to my mind, which presents to you heart-wrenching story but does it in a right way, is an anime series named Kaiba. As a matter of fact, I can barely call it anime. The animation style is very unusual, and so Kaiba is just Eastern animation, from my point of view. But the thing is, Kaiba is brutal. I will try to refrain from spoilers, and I do recommend to everyone to check out Kaiba for themselves if you are up to a story like that. But well, to be brief, episode 3 of Kaiba is something that is not a shame to cry about. In just 20 minutes of the episode, Kaiba splendidly manages to do what Asterigos failed. And the reason is simple. Unlike in Asterigos, in Kaiba, proper decisions has been made and character's arc has been closed. And it's only the start of it, it's only episode 3. Kaiba then does it again, and again, and again. As a matter of fact, Kaiba is pretty much brilliant example of a sad storytelling. There was but one moment when I felt it was off. That was in the episode 6, but that feeling barely lasted a second as the story immediately proceeded to set itself right back on track. Spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1. I'm talking about a moment when the memories of the elderly husband's wife get stolen and then played in front of him with a rather nasty scene of his wife cheating on him in her youth, while rather explicitly admiring her lover. And I thought, man, this is a cheap shot, you do not do it like this. But then, several seconds later, the elderly husband says, "Yes, I always knew about that affair." And it immediately hits very, very differently with just one line. Now, I know comparing a video game and an animation is not quite correct, since they are different mediums, but it is the literal job of the writer to keep in mind what he is writing for, whether or not I will be a player or a viewer. Whether or not I will expect to right the wrong, being part of the story, or whether I will just witness the story without any kind of participation. And therefore, the bad writing is the bad writing in my eyes, and whoever wrote Asterigos would have fucked up animation just as badly. But well, speaking of video games, Asterigos most of all reminds me of Bethesda's Starfield, which I didn't play, but I watched Seth the Intouch's video where he described a quest in which a pre-FTL ship finally reaches a planet that is supposed to be its colony, which by now is already controlled by corporation. And Seth describes how the game gives you 3 pretty much equally bad choices, and the player's actual desire at this point is to shoot up the board of directors of the corporation that controls the planet. Yet of course, Starfield doesn't let you do it because the board of directors is filled with the characters that are essential for the plot. Ultimately, I don't know about Starfield, but this is what I can tell you about Asterigos. The absence of a choice wouldn't have been much of a problem if the plot on its own was anyhow better, but as I said, it doesn't hit the spot. The sole fact that we don't get to fight the main villain in Asterigos, the reason behind the whole misery and pain, it feels very off the point and is a source of a massive frustration for me. I feel Asterigos could have been better if it was a full-fledged RPG. Or at least if it had choices and decisions at least on the level of Vampur. And I feel something like that has been planned at some point of the development of the game. I guess it was abandoned rather early, but I feel like some leftovers are there in the game and we can see them. Like, a lot of people wanted to work for Baraat, the first boss, when he actually makes such an offer to the player, but then the player character just declines it automatically and you get a boss fight, and you cannot avoid that. And it really feels like the option for the peaceful resolution was there. It was planned, but was cut out for whatever reason. And there is a number of the places in the game where you feel like, the option should be there. But it just isn't. Once again, I'm pretty sure it was planned at some point. I understand why it was cut. Asterigos is a game that is massive as is, and to make it even bigger, yeah, I understand why the devs couldn't make it. Which actually brings us to this game I'm playing right now, Werewolf: The Last Warrior, also known as Japan as Super Werewolf Chronicle Werewolf. which is awesome name in my opinion. And I know, the comparison might seem way off, but hear me out. You know how they say that the limits of technology back in the day pushed the devs' creativity? Which is a valid point in my opinion, and here's another one. The limits of technology back in the day helped the devs stay focused on their original idea. Nowadays, the video game engines, pretty much unlimited storage space, etc., they all allow you to make the game pretty much as large as you can handle it. And so I feel like in a number of games, the devs beat more than they can actually chew. Now take a look at Werewolf right here. I think comparing a modern game with an old NES game would serve as a perfect example of less is more. It's small, it doesn't have choices, you just go through the game battling villains boss after boss and get your cheesy ending, but the thing is, it brings way more satisfaction than Asterigos does. Ironically, if you take a look at the Werewolf The Last Warrior on its own, it might be the subject to the very same criticism of beat more than you can chew, as the devs of the Werewolf didn't quite manage to make the levels that are appropriate for both the human and the werewolf form of Chief Werewolf, and so the levels barely manage to highlight the abilities of the werewolf, but to complete them as a human is sometimes right away impossible. Yet with the game being so small, I feel that the shortcomings are barely noticeable. Literally. I pretty much blasted through the game faster than I managed to realize that the levels are rather mediocre. And since I didn't have to play for almost 20 hours only to find out that I can't fight the main villain, I don't feel like I've been cheated out of my time or something. Here I am fighting the last boss right on your screen, and I will finish it in a minute or two, and I will go away completely satisfied. I cannot really say how experienced the Asterigos devs are. Their studio is somewhat obscure, their site doesn't really tell you anything. From what I gathered, they are either Chinese or Taiwanese studio, but even then, you cannot really tell how experienced are the individual devs who are working for the studio. And to investigate each of them separately would be definitely too much of a job that I want to do for the video, which will gather like 40 views tops. Anyway, there are some big names, at least in the soundtrack, if it tells anything. So the game had the budget, yet I feel like the devs couldn't handle the budget. The funding they managed to get their hands on allowed them to create a game which is too big for its own good. And that is, in my opinion, the case of Asterigos. I understand their ambitions and everyone wants to pursue their ideas, but sometimes it is really important to stop and take a look at what you already have and then think, alright, instead of adding new stuff, what can I do to make the stuff that I already done better? And it truly applies not only to video games, it works with many mediums in the same way. Once you are on a roll, it can be really hard to make yourself slow down, but this is, part of the experience, the ability to make yourself stop and think critically, and instead of going further, you gotta go backwards and polish the things that are already here, to look at the whole thing that is already here with some kind of an introspect. It's twice as hard to do this when you have all the funding you need and all the time you need to seemingly satisfy all the ambitions you have, but 99 times out of 100, the time and money will run out way before you will be able to satisfy all your ambitions. Specifically because the more ambitions you satisfy, the more of them tend to appear. And on the other side, time and money, they tend to disappear until there are no more, and your ambitions, you will find yourself in an endless pile of them. It is really important to make yourself stop. So, I will get back to Asterigos at some point. This is my latest modding project, as I mentioned. It will be a video which will guide you to the basics of save game hexadecimal editing. After a recent, rather short but still meaningful conversation on my community page, I figured out that I should release such a video, which will be a starting point, at least some kind of a starting point for those people who never tried hexadecimal editing themselves before. So this will be something that will allow novices hopefully to find their way into the area of save editing. It will come a bit later though, as for now I really feel like I want to try more games like Werewolf the Last Warrior, you know, short games which are on point, concentrated fun. I mean, Morrowind or Daggerfall, they were fun, they were awesome, big games, but the simple truth is, not everyone can pull out a Daggerfall. And well, this is it. Thanks for being with me, cats. Stay cool. Until next time.